Williamsburg is one of my favorite places. It usually takes an hour or so to wait in that line in the visitor center. Joe goes in to get the tickets and he's back in 20 minutes. I said, how are you back so fast? And so he asked the docent what was going on. She said to him, since public schools have quit teaching the principles of American government and freedom, our attendance has gone down 30%.
Wow.
And so I just want to say, when kids are in schools that are teaching them to be ashamed of their country, like they need to apologize for their country, who is going to lay their life on the line and join the armed services? Hi, you're listening to the Zan Tyler podcast.
When my family started our homeschooling journey, there were so many decisions to make. But one of our best decisions was choosing to use BJU Press Homeschool. I've never seen my kids so excited to get textbooks before. I'm amazed by how interesting and interactive the lessons are. My kids actually look forward to them. We use the online video lessons for all our courses, but I know some families choose to teach from the textbooks. What I love is that I can trust BJU Press to uphold our values. The Bible and biblical principles are woven throughout each subject. I'll admit, I was a bit nervous when I started homeschooling, but I've found a wonderful online community of other BJU Press homeschool families and consultants. The Homeschool Hub also makes my job easier. I can set up our schedules and rearrange them with just a few clicks. On the dashboard, I can see each of my kids' progress, and the assignments page shows me quickly what's ready for me to check or grade. I'm glad my son's biology assignments are automatically graded. BJU Press Homeschool has given us the tools and confidence to homeschool our children. For more information, do what I did and visit the BJU Press Homeschool website or talk with your local HomeWorks consultant.
Welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast, and my guest today is Natalie Mack. As I was reading my husband Joe all of Natalie's accomplishments and her life as a homeschooling mom, all the things she's done, he said, well, maybe you should just read her bio and that will take up the whole podcast. But we decided we would rather talk to you instead. And so let me just acquaint our audience a little bit with you, the moms and dads out there. Natalie is a mom of 5, a retired Navy chaplain's wife, a retired therapist, a military home educator since 2001, and the homeschool military consultant for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. So we're going to talk about all of that, Natalie, in the time that we have together today. So a little bit, tell us about your life before homeschooling very quickly, what you did.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Life pre-homeschooling. Sometimes I forget there was a life before homeschooling.
I was thinking about your work as a therapist, which really laid the groundwork so much for what you're doing today, I think, in a lot of ways.
It really did. You know, I went to college and I went to Spelman College in Atlanta. I loved the school, and I graduated with political science and Spanish. And when I graduated, I knew I wanted to go to graduate school. My husband had asked me to marry him, and I said, no, I'm going to grad school, like, catch you later, right? And he had orders. He thought to Arizona at the time, and I said, no, I don't want to go to Arizona. I'm going to grad school. So he was like just very disappointed about that. But fast forward to, I thought that I wanted to be a human rights activist in South America, right? I saw myself with a backpack on my back, and I'm going in and I'm helping the people. And that's the key, helping the people, that I really always had a heart for the people. I'm an extrovert, if people haven't already been able to tell in these few seconds. And I started grad school in international studies, and it was more theory, policy, and less people, right? Less touching the people. And someone suggested, have you considered counseling? Well, I said no, because like in psychology in high school, I hated the class, right? I didn't want to know anything about Freud, and I just felt he was crazy. And I thought, no, I can't possibly go into psychology with those type of thoughts, right? But I did look into it and obviously switched to the School of Counseling at George Washington University, and obviously graduated with a master's in education, and then decided, hey, I do want to marry you, right? I love you. I do want to marry you, and joined him in the Mojave Desert at Fort Irwin, California, and began working as a drug and alcohol counselor for the Army. Eventually, we moved overseas at some point. We had children a little bit. We had one child at that time, and I worked for social work for the Army. And in Germany. And then I came back eventually, a whole nother story for another time, Zan, but my husband got out of the Army. He was a captain in the Army in military intelligence, was called to the ministry. God confirmed that call through me, and he got out, came back. We did civilian life, and I worked as a bilingual adolescent substance abuse counselor for the city of Alexandria here in Virginia, and eventually private practice to homeschooling. So
Well,
yes,
that is pretty amazing. So you're bilingual in Spanish and English?
yes,
Okay,
I
I
am.
really
Yeah,
think you're trilingual. I think you speak a third language that is military acronyms.
military acronyms. I'm really very proficient in military acronyms.
If you've never been around the military, you don't know how many acronyms they are. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the military, but I have to tell
Okay.
you my one experience, Natalie. Now, both of our dads were World War II vets. So, and they
Okay.
were both
Wow.
in the
Awesome.
Navy.
Okay.
And so we have a love and a great love and appreciation for the military. And we grew up with all those
Oh,
stories. But
yes.
the most recent thing Joe and I did, we attended the Army Educators Tour at Fort Stewart, Georgia last year. They
Yes.
had like 30 or 40 educators from around the country, and we were there representing homeschoolers. I think might have been two other homeschoolers there as well. I can't remember the exact numbers. The thing that impressed me was all the acronyms that came out of their mouths, and I was a little crazy in my hands saying, I don't know what that is. I don't know. And I really wanted to understand because they were reaching out to the homeschool
Yes.
community. And you know
Right.
that we've had a difficult past in some ways with the military and
Yes.
homeschool students.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
okay, so I'm getting ahead of
I do.
myself.
I
So
do. No, no,
really,
no. I hear you. Yeah, the acronyms. And you wonder, what are they telling me I'm getting ready to do? Like, where am I going to where, right? It's all acronym language. And you wonder, okay, let me just stay seated and then they'll tell me, they'll explain it at some point. So,
that's right. So before we move on, tell me how you got into homeschooling and a little bit about your kids.
okay, how do we get in? Well, during that journey of private practice, um, my heart always was to be a mom, and I loved my kids. I enjoyed being around them. We always did, the education and the extras, right? And they were in a private, at that time, we had 3 children when we began homeschooling. I was expecting our 4th, and that's a whole nother story. Joe was right. I got lots of lies, right? So, they were the 2 oldest were girls, and they were in a private Montessori school. We were paying like a lot of money, but we felt that was the best option. And but I just felt like I needed to do a little bit more. God started bringing homeschoolers into my life. And I know people listening will go, oh my gosh, that's my same story. Like, I'm not even thinking about homeschooling, and then they're dropping out of the sky, right? And you're like, okay, it's raining homeschoolers. And you're like, oh God, what is happening, right? And so he started to speak into my heart that this is what I'm calling you to. And I kind of resisted because we love this little private Montessori school that we were paying, dearly for.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
I just felt like, let me keep volunteering a little bit more. And I have a TEDx that I talk a little bit about this story too in my TEDx of like, okay, no, this wasn't it. And God, we wanted to go back into the military. My husband finished seminary, and we decided, okay, let's do this because we missed military life. I just love military life, even though it's hard. It's hard, but I have a heart for it and service. And we went back in and we got orders to California. Well, a couple of factors. I heard God saying, okay, reciprocity with your license. Okay, it's going to be more classes probably to get licensed in California. Private Montessori school in California. Who's going to pay for that? and just and quite honestly, military pay is a lot less than what you make as a civilian. And so all those things, he said, okay, what are you going to do now? And I knew he had put me in a spot where I just needed to be obedient. And I'm so thankful every day. Like, it has been one of the best decisions we have made. And we have 5 children ultimately. That one that I was expecting when we started homeschooling, we flew about 2 weeks after 9/11, and that was a crazy time to be flying and to be pregnant I think I was at 34 weeks. I know some
And
people
to
are
be
counting
back in
and
the
they're saying,
military.
yeah, to go back into the military, to fly to join my husband in California. He'd already gotten sent to California to Camp Pendleton with the Marine Corps. Say, hoorah, right? And we were like, okay, we're going to join. So we sold our house, moved in with my mother-in-law. 9/11 happened. I was 34 weeks pregnant, and I wasn't probably supposed to be on that plane, but I felt like God called us to join. Of course, we wanted to be reunited. And then 2 weeks after we got there, boxes still everywhere. Like, that's what military moves. Boxes exist for a while. And we're eating like pizza from Domino's on the boxes were our tabletop, right? Because we just didn't have a house set up. And I'm 34 plus weeks pregnant. So, and the baby, 36 weeks, and our 4th child came. So, we eventually, added one more. God added one more to our family, and he's our youngest that we're still homeschooling. The other 4 have graduated on to college.
Tell us a little bit about what your kids are doing.
About my children. Okay, so the youngest is going to be 16 the end of July. He's like an only child, which is a different season, right? Especially my husband retired a year and a half ago after 34 years of Navy service, of military service. And it's an interesting season to have one child homeschooling. But at one point, there were 5 in the home. The next son is starting senior year at George Mason University Honors College, and he is looking into urban planning. And then the next oldest boy he graduated from American University in Washington, D.C., School of International Service, and he's working in Anchorage, Alaska. And then the 2 girls. The next is a 28-year-old. She was a D1 soccer athlete at Liberty University. Yes, we did complete the NCAA eligibility process, and we sweated through it. But praise God, obviously went through and she got picked up for scholarship and was playing there for Liberty. And then eventually she went to graduate school at Howard University, got a master's in social work, so she's in practice, sort of like I was. Really interesting how that all came around. And then our oldest daughter is, she got her master's in international education from George Washington University, where I got my master's. And she is an IB, an international baccalaureate coordinator for DC public schools.
She was also a Fulbright scholar, wasn't she?
She was, right, Fulbright global scholar, went to Peru last summer. She's fluent in Mandarin and conversing in Russian. I kept saying, hey, don't you want to learn Spanish? Like, I can hook you up, right? As a homeschool mom, we can find the means. And she's like, no. And I'm like, oh gosh. And my husband during that time, of course, was still active duty. We were stationed at Little Creek in Virginia Beach, and he had the opportunity as the base chaplain at that time to participate in a mission trip to Ukraine. And so he and the 2 girls went with him to Ukraine, and they had a great opportunity there, a great experience. And my oldest daughter came back and said, I want to learn Russian. And I'm thinking, I tried Spanish, like, okay. And we got Rosetta Stone and some Russian 101 books from the library, because I said, okay, let's see what she does, right? Just like homeschools, we can find the books. Let's see. You can learn this, right? You can learn this. This is one of the reasons we're homeschooling. You can learn this. And so she actually went at it, and to the point that she excelled past those and needed more. And we were able to enroll her as a dual enrollment student at Tidewater Community College in Virginia Beach. And so she took Russian 101 and 102. And then eventually we got orders overseas to Naples, Italy. She did her first year of college overseas with us, online with Regent University, as well as University of Maryland Global Campus, I think it is called now. And then she said, Mom, I'm loving being over here. We traveled, and she loved it, but she wanted to really experience a college campus environment. I know. There are things
Well,
on there, maybe not, but she just wanted that experience, right?
yeah,
She ended up going to Liberty University. And when she got there and she called us overseas, and we were still, of course, stationed overseas, and she said, Mom, they don't have Russian. And I'm like, okay, well, do they have Spanish? And she's like, yes, Mom, but I don't want Spanish. So she said, but they have Mandarin. I said, okay, knowing this daughter, we affirm our kids. I was like, okay. She said, what should I do? I said, take Mandarin. And so she got a minor in Mandarin and in Chinese. And ended up, she's been back to China 5 times. Like, yeah,
that's
she did
amazing.
study abroad, and then she has taught there. And then with DC Public Schools, they've asked her 2 years prior to COVID to lead a delegation of high school students to China. So they went to, I think, I'm not going to pronounce it right, Chengdu, which is the pandas, and Beijing.
So that's pretty
Mouthful.
remarkable. So
I'm
homeschooling
thankful.
works.
Homeschooling works. And everyone's journey looks differently. I know people hear our story and they go, oh, we and I'm like, everyone's journey looks differently, and it's supposed
right.
to, right? Because God's created everyone's children uniquely. So find their passion and their interests, their skills, their abilities, what they want, what God's speaking into their life, into your life as a mom and dad, and pull that together. And that's the journey. That's the path. And that's the best place to go. So when I share my story, I always try to say, this is what our journey was. Your journey is going to be equally impressive, and it's going to be the path God has you on. So, yeah.
So tell us how you morphed from a homeschool mom into your work in the military community with other homeschool moms.
Okay, well, because I've only homeschooled as a military homeschooler. When we started homeschooling in 9/11, we were already active duty. My husband was already in California at Camp Pendleton.
Mm-hmm.
And when we joined him, we lived on post, and I had our 4th child, recovered from a C-section, and then, jumped in like we do, right? And the homeschool support group there needed someone to lead field trips. I love to travel. I love to see things. And so I said, oh, I'll do it. And so I did. And that began my whole leadership experience. And I've started leadership a group at Little Creek for 5 years, military Christian homeschool support group. We had a huge amount of families. We had Yvonne Bunn come speak. We've had all kinds of stuff that we did. Then I got orders overseas to Naples, Italy. I led the Naples Christian homeschool group there. Then we came to Eastern North Carolina, and I helped there with some groups, military groups. And now here at Fort Belvoir in Northern Virginia, I've been president for several years. And so it's just all like I help all homeschoolers, right? Because I do get, how you get tagged when someone knows, the neighbor knows you homeschool, and they got a cousin that lives in Nebraska who's like, okay, I need you to help her, right? So you get tagged. So I help everyone, right. But my experience has been within military homeschooling.
So now, when did you go to work for Homeschool Legal Defense Association?
Yes, in the middle of the pandemic, September 2020, Heather Fromack, which I know you know, contacted me. I had attended the National Leaders Conference in Asheville, supporting Cheryl Carter and some other speakers.
A good friend of ours.
Yeah, I attended that, and I met Heather. Fast forward, we went to NLC, and then Heather, of course, later texted me.
And that's the National Leadership Conference for those of you who don't know.
The National Leadership Conference for HSLDA, right? Yeah. And so Heather contacted me and said, we are looking to hire a high school educational consultant. Do you know anyone? And I'm thinking, I don't know anyone. Like, surely not me. I haven't worked out of the home since 2001, right? When I stopped private practice. And I'm like, I help people. I'm always been helping and consulting people for years. I've led workshops on homeschooling in the community for years, but I didn't think about myself in that position. And I remember my husband was already on a Geo Bachelor tour. I guess I should explain that. Geo Bachelor. He got an assignment, and we chose not to accompany him to the assignment. And I called him and said, hey, I got a call about da-da-da. And do I know anyone? And he said, you. And I'm like, huh? So I thought about it, and I really felt God saying, yeah, you. And so I called her back and I said, maybe me, maybe, I don't know. What is it? What will I do? And so that's the story of actually how I started working for HSLDA.
When you first went to work for them, you were a high school consultant, correct?
I was exactly correct.
And then how did you move into your position of being the military consultant or coordinator for them?
Yes. Okay. I know people ask that. How did you get from that to that? During the interview, obviously my military experience came up, right? It's because it's who I am. And they said, oh, we might need you to help with some things military related with homeschooling at some point. I said, oh, sure. I do that all the time, right? And it turned into, I think I did a webinar, maybe. I don't know if it was a Facebook Live or webinar. And then I ended up, we had a conversation about what they really wanted to do in terms of reaching the military homeschool community. They've always served military homeschoolers. They have always received the calls from the military homeschoolers. I'm going overseas or I'm moving to the state. What do I do? But they didn't have a program that spoke the language, right, of the military community.
Or knew the acronyms, right?
Knew the
acronyms,
that's exactly, right. They didn't have an interpreter, right? They didn't have an interpreter. And so it was like, would you, consider? And I just said, oh, okay. So at that point, I thought, what would I want from an organization like Homeschool Legal Defense Association? Obviously, I know I get legal, but what additional support could I use? And that's when I began to pull resources from what I had into, I believe this would be it. And so it's become a pretty big program, and I'm part-time there. I'm part-time because I'm still
amazing.
I'm still homeschooling. So I have to remind myself of that. No, I'm joking. So
what people may not know is that, as we were discussing earlier, homeschoolers had a pretty hard time with the military back in the day. Chris Klicka, who has gone to be with the Lord, was the attorney at Homeschool Legal Defense Association who worked with the Department of Defense. And they always wanted to put our kids, make our kids who were homeschool graduates take the GED instead of giving them an opportunity to be tier 2. So I quickly want to tell you about my experience, Natalie, when we were on this, the Home Educators Tour, the Army Army Educators Tour.
Right.
And so at the closing banquet, there was a 2-star general there. And I asked him why the interest in homeschooling all of a sudden. I told him, I said, you guys have given homeschoolers a pretty rough go of it historically. And he said, well, our toughest class is an EOD class, I think, and that they give new recruits. And that has something to do with explosive devices. I'm not sure if I got the acronym right.
Yeah. Explosive ordinance.
And he said it's their most difficult class.
Yeah.
And so it was during the pandemic. And so they had this huge graduation on Zoom. And he said, he talked to the top guy in the class, and he said, son, where did you go to high school? I'd like to recognize your high school. And he said, I was homeschooled. And he said, well, my congratulations to your parents. And then the general talked to the number 2 young man, and said, where did you go to high school? And he said, I was homeschooled. And he said, well, my congratulations to your parents. And so he says to the number 3 graduate, where did you go to high school? And he said, I was homeschooled. And he said, my congratulations to your parents. And he said, that's a lot. There was a lot of physics and a lot of chemistry involved in that course. And it really opened my eyes that we're missing out. And then after that, you talked about the ASVAB that, have we discussed the ASVAB already?
No, we haven't discussed the ASVAB. Okay. No.
So this is a test that seniors in high school will take, or people who want to go into the military.
Yes.
And so a friend of mine in the military said that only 30% of public school kids are passing the ASVAB these days. And there's so many kids who are out of shape that physically can't make the cut. I mean, Joe and I live in Columbia, South Carolina, and there's a huge base
Fort Jackson.
Fort Jackson. Yes. And so we're well acquainted with the new recruits coming in. And
Yes.
so all of a sudden, my military friends have really been interested in homeschoolers because they're doing well in the ASVAB, and they're,
Yes.
you know, pretty much in shape,
Yes.
not, I mean, that's not categorically, but they spend a lot of
Right.
time outdoors doing a
Right.
lot of different things.
I am flying to Fort Carson Monday for that Army National Educators Tour. So it's not at
Oh,
Fort
are
Stewart
you
this year; it's at
really?
Fort Carson. Yeah. So I'm flying out with that, and so yes, definitely, the military hasn't reached. When I say the military, I mean all of the branches, right? And they haven't reached their numbers, their quota. And they don't, I think I heard recently, they don't anticipate reaching the quota this year either.
Now, when you
Um,
say quota, you mean the number of recruits they need every year to meet their.
Exactly. Right. The
Okay.
number of recruits that they need. Exactly. I mean, I do want to put out that we're talking like about enlistment. There is the academy, right? And there's the
Right.
ROTC.
Right.
So there are other ways to join the military. But reference the ASVAB, that would be for those who want to enlist in the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. I think I have that right. Homeschoolers past that ASVAB usually on that first go around, and they aren't seeing that happening, especially coming out of COVID. Before COVID, recruiters were able to be in a lot of the public schools, so they were on site in these schools making contact, and they,
Hmm.
COVID, of course, that stopped. And then during that process, they're finding coming out of that these students aren't passing the ASVAB in general, right? I know I'm not going to categorize. I know there are some that
Right.
are, but in
Right.
general, the numbers, they're just not. And the physical fitness aspect as well. And so we're acing through. We already know how excellent homeschoolers are, and that we tend to be more patriotic. We tend to understand service to our country in ways that maybe others don't. So we've been here. It's just that now that the military is looking around and saying, whoa, we have not tapped into this community. And they are really tapping in hard. It's probably why I was invited, right? Because of Army connection.
Right. All of your contacts, yes, and connections,
Yeah, as
experience.
well
Yeah.
as the Air Force reached out about a year ago. This is a crazy story. About a year ago, I got a call, I got an email to my HSLDA saying, hey, blah, blah, Air Force, we want to talk, okay. So, and I knew it wasn't like anything that needed to be legal, right? Because I don't handle those. I
Right.
take those to those,
Right.
right? So I called back and they said, oh yeah, we really just want to know a little bit more about homeschooling. And I thought, oh, okay. Told them just a little bit, and it wasn't a report or anything. It was a safe call. And then about a few months later, I got another call from the same guy. Oh yeah, we just we're thinking about doing something. It was very
Hmm.
military like,
Hmm.
very right, top secret. And so I told my husband, what's going on? So then I got a call with someone saying, more detail. We are wanting to reach the military. I'm wanting to reach the homeschool community, and we would love to talk with you about what that looks like. And I thought, oh, okay. So they connected me to, that's when I got through that door up to the command. And I ended up getting on a Zoom call with a commander and a sergeant. And they both were saying, listen, this is what we are looking to do. We have these professional development summits coming up in Leesburg in January. And the Air Force, we didn't meet our numbers. We really realized, and I think actually the commander at one point had homeschooled. So he was homeschool friendly. He is homeschool
Yes.
friendly.
Yes.
And he was like, can we talk? I just want to get to know you, see, what you think about this and da da da. And at the end, he looked over and saw, he said, yeah, I want her to come speak, and I was like, oh, okay, good. I'm in, right? So they invited me to come to Leesburg. And I spoke for, I don't know, 45 minutes to over 100 recruiters that were there. And I basically talked about homeschooling, like homeschooling modalities.
Now, when you say modalities, what do you mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, Charlotte Mason from eclectic to classical, just, understanding so they can understand when that homeschooler walks in the recruiter's office, you know, understand more about what homeschooling, understand those, not the acronyms, but the verbiage, right? The vocabulary of homeschooling,
right.
so that they can have a more productive conversation, and so that they can appreciate and understand what homeschoolers are doing academically, all that we bring to the table, how excellent we are, the different ways that we homeschool, what transcripts will look like, all the things that I just wanted to be an advocate for homeschooling and to show as much as I could about the world of homeschooling, to be honest. And so that was pretty much the presentation. And they were so excited and loved it. So
that is great. One thing I want to say to all moms and dads out there, even if you're not involved in military homeschooling, as Americans, we all have an vested interest in how our military armed services are doing. And I just have to say this because you were talking about how homeschoolers tend to be more patriotic.
Yes.
Joe and I were speaking at a leadership conference at the Home Educators of Virginia, HEAV Leadership Forum several years ago, and it was in Colonial Williamsburg. So while I was speaking and Joe was not, I sent him out to get our tickets to tour Williamsburg.
Yes.
And so Williamsburg is one of my favorite places. And
Mine
besides
too.
the fact that it can
Besides
the fact that it can be hot as Dickens, every time we go, It seems like we still love it. It usually takes an hour or so to wait in that line in the visitor center. So this is April. Joe goes in to get the tickets and he's back in 20 minutes. I said, how are you back so fast? And he said, well, there was hardly anybody there. And I said, what? And so he asked the docent what was going on. She said to him, since public schools have quit teaching the principles of American government and freedom, our attendance has gone down 30%. And so I just want to say, when kids are in schools that are teaching them to be ashamed of their country, like they need to apologize for their country, who is going to lay their life on the line and join the armed services? And that's one thing I love about homeschoolers. By and large, categorically, we are teaching the principles of freedom and American government and American history to our kids. They love America. And so they are willing to defend America. Even if it costs them their lives. So I just have to get that in there.
Yes, no, I hear you. Yeah, definitely. And so that's what I'm hearing from all sources, not just Army contacts. I do want to make sure that homeschoolers get a fair shake. And so I can't handle the legal side, and we have adequate, excellent attorneys, that can do that on the HSLDA side. But definitely, my role is to be an advocate.
Help everybody understand homeschooling. I mean, homeschoolers help them understand what their, what their opportunities could be, and help the armed services personnel understand how homeschoolers can help fill the void that they're having.
Exactly. So true. And yes, exactly,
so,
Zan.
Okay, so I just have to tell you this. When you go to the Army Educators Tour, last year they invited us. Last year they invited us to jump out of airplanes with the Golden Knights, which is their crack paratrooper people. And so Joe and I jumped.
Yes.
So we jumped from the plane. We parachuted. It was pretty cool. So I'm just saying, if you have the chance, you should do it.
Yeah, no. My husband is airborne, so I'm like, no, I don't have. Now, our youngest daughter and our middle son both jumped. They went out to Leesburg, and Dad, who's airborne, was like, are you sure that this is a safe operation? Like, where are you jumping from? Is this some rinky-dink place? Like, do they keep, how well do they keep check on airplanes? Like, where are you going? But when they are adults, right, you may get the call, hey, I'm getting ready to jump. And you're like, where are you, right? So thankfully, they told us in advance. So he got up bright and early, took our youngest son, and he was out there on the tarmac, like, looking around, like, making
checking it out.
Yeah. And they both jumped, but I don't have it in me. I want to have it in me because I think it would be so awesome, but I just know that this is a girl who can't even sit calmly in a ski lift, right? So I don't go up those anymore. I don't think it would be wise. Matter of fact, my husband probably would say, don't jump.
Well,
I'm
it
like,
was. I'll have to say, we knew we were so safe with the Golden Knights.
yes, I know
It
you're
doesn't.
safe.
It
I know
doesn't
you're
get any safer than that.
exactly
So
does not. That is a true statement. So no, I definitely know they are excellent at what they do, and you are the safest you could ever be jumping out of anything up in the air.
Natalie, before we close, I know you have a book that you've written and you have a website. Just tell us the different ways that people can contact you through HSLDA if they want to buy your book, if
Yes.
they want to find out more about you personally and your other
Yes.
entrepreneurial ventures. I mean, you just are a jack of all trades.
Yeah, I'm like multi-passionate. I'm learning like, okay, like do one thing, but I love just stuff. Like I love doing things, right? And I love so many different areas. So yeah, so I wrote a book. It's 101 tips for homeschoolers is the title. So you can find it on Amazon, and it is a journal book, meaning I put a tip, I put a little bit of a write-up about my thoughts about it, like trust the process is the first tip. Trust the homeschooling process. I write about that. And then I have a prompt, a question. And then I have journal lines for you to you just give your thoughts to, answers to the questions. And so it's 101 tips. I have another book that I'm working on specifically for military. It's going to be a guide, a very small guide for PCSing. We didn't talk about the acronyms, Zan. PCSing is permanent change of station, which it's not anything permanent about it. You're moving again in 2 or 3 years, right? So, but the military has a sense of humor. You either laugh or you just suffer through it, right? And so PCS is this guide about how to homeschool and move at the same time. So I have that going. I'm starting a podcast called Base and then the number 2 Base Military Homeschooling.
Oh,
And the
that's
goal of that,
exciting.
yeah, I should have been launched now, but all the things, right? So
Right. That's
um,
right.
it's coming soon, and it's going to be, it's going to be released twice a month. I'll speak, and then another time in the month, I'll have a guest. The guest will be military moms or resources and communities that provide
Right.
benefits and support to military. So the goal really is, one of the biggest questions I get asked in moderating and in leading all these years is, what is it like to homeschool here? Can I homeschool overseas? What is it like that, at Fort Hood? Who's there? What type of co-ops? What support groups? All the
Mhm.
questions surrounding the adjustment. Because even though military families choose to homeschool maybe for that stability of education, right? That might be one main reason. We still have to adjust every couple of years to new homeschool groups, new homeschool communities. Our kids still have to find new homeschool friends. All the things still happen in that moving. And so those questions surrounding that whole move process, I will have the guest speak about Fort Hood or Fort Irwin or, overseas in,
Right. Right.
Stuttgart, Germany. What is life like there as a homeschooler? What support groups exist? All of the things. So that's Base to Base Military Homeschooling Podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Tell us about your website and how people
Yeah.
can find you.
So I do have a website. It is Natalie Mack, Natalie-Mack.com. And you can find me there. I have like a lot of info on there. I do consultations, evaluations. I also help military homeschool support group leaders set up groups at different bases based on what we do at Fort Belvoir. So, and then I do consultations and educational evaluations, consultations and things like that for homeschoolers, not just military. So you can find all of that on my website, or you can find me. I'm on Facebook, Homeschool Natalie Mack on all the platforms. So Facebook, Homeschool Natalie Mack business page, Instagram, Homeschool Natalie Mack, Pinterest, and a YouTube channel as well, Homeschool Natalie Mack. So you can find me everywhere.
And how about HSLDA? If they want to find you
Yeah.
there, how do
If you
they
want to
do
find me
that?
over on the HSLDA side and know more about all the programs that we support military homeschoolers with, then we have an HSLDA military families page that I moderate. That's one place. We also have a landing page on our hslda.org website. If you go to the website, click community, you'll go down and you'll see one of the tabs is military resources, as well as you can email me at military@hslda.org. So
Oh,
you can
that's
find me.
great.
I'm out there.
Natalie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh,
It has
I'm so
been
excited.
such a
Thank you.
joy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking me. I love this and I appreciate all you do, Zan, for all
Oh,
the years. Like I'm staying, we're on your shoulders. Like you've done all this work, you and so many others. And I didn't even like get to just say how much I appreciate. Now I'm a big supporter of those that have gone before me and paved the way for me to be able to have done what I do. I hope to be that blessing to those
mm.
who are coming behind me as well.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank our sponsor, BJU Press Homeschool. I want to thank them for many, many things, but for publishing curriculum that does foster a love for freedom and a love for our country and our students. And you can find out more about that curriculum at bjupresshomeschool.com. And you can find more about me and my podcast at zantyler.com. So thank you all for joining us today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.